Don't forget the doc. Several network participants recently called into Dr. Rick Wright's Old School Sundays radio show. Check this out.
And direct through the modern history of technology and radio. Let me go down to my superstar brother, Old School Sunday incredible New York street reporter, Mr. Donald Singletary. How you doing, Donald?
Hey, Rick, how you doing? How you doing, man? You know, it's been an amazing day, amazing few days, and, you know, I had to go up to the Apollo, and I would have called you directly from there, but the crowds and the noise, I knew you would have never heard me over that cell phone, so I had to race back out of here to another unnamed Harlem location to talk to you.
Well, tell us about it, man. Talk to us. We are so proud to have you on air from New York City, Donald Singletary, as we think about, we've been celebrating the life and the legacy of Michael Jackson, man. Your thoughts, and give us a report of what's happening in New York City, because New York City is blowing up right now.
I'm telling you. So I got up there to the Apollo, and the crowds were not as big as they were earlier. I spoke with several people who said that there were people out there all night long, Rick, and that people just who just never left, I guess, but to change clothes and go to the bathroom since this thing occurred. You know, and it's interesting, too, the Apollo has gotten more national media coverage, you know, national treasure that it is. It finally deserves to get some of this national media coverage. But the folks out there in the crowd, it's a jubilant crowd, Rick. It really is. And today, the people closest to the front of the Apollo were younger people. It just tells you how many generations Michael transcends. A lot of them weren't around, you know, by a stretch when Michael first started out. When you and I remember him back about 1969. And, you know, it was just a celebration. People holding up his pictures and you know, people hawking T-shirts and CDs and bootleg albums and videos, and just a wonderful thing. They have a wall outside where people were signing and sending messages. So, Rick, I got up there, and I signed my name, and I signed yours, too, Rick.
Oh, thank you, Donald.
So you're immortalized up there on the Great Wall. And I'll tell you, though, but there was so much going on in Harlem today. Right up the block, Cuba Gooding Sr., you remember from the Main Ingredient, you know?
Yes. In fact, he's been my guest here at Power 106.9 Radio.
Well, he was all over Black Radio today. He was acknowledging Michael, and also he's singing up the street at a place called the Gospel Cafe up in Harlem. And just a few weeks ago, he was in town singing with Tony Bennett. So he's doing well.
He's got a big record he left with me called For the Family that I play. I think I can try to find it here and kind of get into it this afternoon. But Cuba Gooding Sr., Main Ingredient, everybody plays the fool.
That's right. He nailed that one, didn't he?
Oh, yes.
You know, some of the European couple up there outside the Apollo, and they said they just happened to be visiting New York about now, and they said they were so glad. They had planned to come to Harlem anyway, but they were so glad they got to come up to the Apollo and pay tribute to Michael, because, you know, Michael was just global, man. And he really was truly so global. And you think about it, you know, in our lifetime, you know, there have been four. If you go back to, like, Elvis, then the Beatles, and, you know, and then Michael, you know, and those are the people who, and if you want to go back to pre that, it would be Frank Sinatra, you know, who just drew that type of attention, that love, that outpouring of passion. It's just an amazing, amazing thing. And it's one of those deaths that I will remember where I was and what I was doing when I heard the news.
Oh, man, until I was home. You know, you mentioned Frank Sinatra, and we must mention a dynamite brother. I just played the Godfather Soul here, the 4 o'clock funk hour. But Quincy Jones.
Oh, please,
Quincy Jones, man. In fact, he produced Fly Me to the Moon, that Frank Sinatra cut.
He sure did. You know, people forget he was an executive at Decca Records at a time when there were really no black executives at any major white label.
Oh, man, I'm telling you, in the 5 o'clock hour, our historical and attitudinal hour, I want to get into the technological cohesiveness of Michael Jackson, man, and how he basically got MTV going, you know, for African-American artists and all. And I'm going to get into that and also talk about, man, what he basically did. You know, many times I mentioned, in fact, I was looking at Eddie O.J., who was a big disc jockey in New York City, was talking about bringing Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5 on stage at the world-famous Apollo Theater, man, and they had never been there before. You know, those New York City crowds, right, Donald?
Oh, yeah.
You know, that third balcony in the Apollo Theater, man, is a tough one, isn't it?
That's a tough crowd.
But they tell me
that
Eddie O.J. and all the guys brought the incredible group Michael Jackson, or the Jackson 5 at that time, on stage. at the Apollo Theater back in the 1960s, and it was natural soul showtime, man.
Yeah.
Oh, it was the real deal.
Well, you know, they're planning on Tuesday an event that's going to be actually held outside the Apollo because obviously they couldn't accommodate the crowd still be there. It's going to start at 2 p.m. and run until about 9. I'm certain it'll probably run much later than that. Reverend Al is one of the people involved in putting it together, and many people, celebrities and politicians and just people in the music industry will be there to speak. And, you know, it's one of those things where if they say it starts at 2 p.m., you know, you can't come too early. You know,
I tell you what they got to do,
all day and all night.
Hey,
They're also planning a big, you know, more formal event at the Apollo sometime in July. They haven't put a date on it yet. But that's what a fellow outside the Apollo who works there was telling me this afternoon. So it's just really an amazing thing. You know, you think about Michael's impact on so many levels.
Yes.
You were talking about how the MTV thing, actually, you know, even his record label people threatened to pull all their artists, all their white artists off MTV. That's how much clout Michael had.
Oh,
he had that kind of leverage, you know. And, you know, I started thinking about there's nobody who hasn't gotten in front of that mirror and tried to do a Michael Jackson move. You know?
Everybody. Hey, Donald.
Yeah.
You know, another thing I was thinking about, too, with Donald, with Michael, is that, you know, when I Want You Back and all those records came out, AM radio was the thing that was kicking with WWRL in New York and WNJR and all the AM radio stations. FM hadn't hit yet, and Michael Jackson is also in that connection with FM radio and then into cable and MTV. And we'll talk about that, of course, in the 5 o'clock hour.
You know, interestingly, they played on WBLS, they played an old tape of Frankie Crocker interviewing Michael Jackson right about the time BLS came out, around 1971, 72.
Yes.
Yeah. And it was Michael was still young then, and yeah, they just the impact was just absolutely enormous. He made really videos what they are.
Oh yes, he did. He took it to a whole nother level, and then he had to really basically do better than his own creativity because he set the bar.
He really did.
He set the bar.
He absolutely did. So it really is an amazing thing. His impact will be felt in so many ways, and you see people just all around the world. It reminded me of how people reacted when Obama got elected president.
Oh yes,
just that type of outpouring, and you know they're all joyous. As much as we will miss him, he gave so much joy to the planet, and with his very many benevolence and charitable donations, to not forget that. He just brought so much joy to people.
An incredible life and an incredible legacy. Hey, Donald, you're a great public relations giant in New York City. You should get with my dear friend, the Reverend Al Sharpton, man, and say they should bring that body to the Apollo Theater and let it lie in state like the Godfather of Soul, James Brown.
You know, I wouldn't rule that out yet because they're being very, very quiet about the family's wishes. And the one thing that seems to be clear is that the family wants to do two things. They want to have some type of event where the public can take part. So I wouldn't rule that out.
New York City and also Chicago, man.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Donald, thank you so much for checking in from New York City, man, and the Apollo Theater and all of the big tributes that are taking place in New York City, remembering Michael Jackson.
Absolutely. Hopefully next Sunday I'll have a report for you on this Tuesday's event at the Apollo.
Oh, Donald, we'll be standing by here at Power 106.9. Today's R&B and old school, and thank God for all that you, Donald. Love you, man.
All right, remember, you're on that wall for immortality now.
Oh, thank you so much for putting Dr. Rick Wright's name on the wall of the Apollo Theater, man, honoring Michael Jackson.
All right, so get to all the Syracuse University alums throughout the world. Checking out Dr. Rick Wright, Power 106.9 Old School Sunday. On a big bad Sunday afternoon, Dr. Rick Wright live and well in Syracuse here at Power 106.9 Radio. Do it.
The network reminds you that you too may call in to Dr. Rick Wright on Sundays between 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Check in with the doc at area code 315-428-1069. Don't forget the doc.